Godzilla and Kratos in a lot of ways are very similar. Both of these guys are known for taking on huge pantheons, with both of these guys being able to say they beat Thor and Zeus and walked away from the conflict. And while Godzilla isn't exactly a god or anything, he's about the closest thing to it without exactly being one. I also suppose one could say the same thing about Kratos. So with that being said, let's see how Godzilla would fare in the God of War verse. But why this video and why now? Well, Death Battle is supposedly coming back this week, and with it we'll see the return of Kratos, the God of War himself. Unfortunately, I couldn't make a video on if he beats Shura or not because I've already done that, and yeah, Kratos dog walks this guy really bad. But I wasn't going to let that stop me from talking about the once esteemed former Ghost of Sparta. So here we are. I figured that I would put my own spin on it and see whether or not Godzilla, or more specifically the Goji as seen from the Heisei era of Toho's film chronology, could take on the many different beasts, gods, and even Kratos himself. To set the stage, I'll be independently power scaling the Greek, Egyptian, and Norse pantheons to see how Godzilla scales in comparison in terms of power. So that means we won't be using the higher end scales for the Greek saga, which pretty much hinge on the narrative implications between the Norse and Greek sectors of the gods. So Godzilla basically gonna pull up a Marvel on this one and just run the God of War gauntlet, with said gauntlet consisting of these three sets of gods, as you know, those are the three sets that we've seen in this franchise. And just for fun, at the end we'll see how he fares against the god killer himself, Kratos. So if that sounds interesting to you, I recommend that you stick around. And if you like the video at the end, I implore you guys to subscribe. We're on the road to 100,000 subscribers, and I think it's a goal that we can hit by the end of the year. So, you know, bless your boy up. We also post numerous shorts throughout the week, and we stream 2 times as well, so... I don't care about no stupid chase. I want to get me over. You're gonna get a lot of content out of me. But with that being said, let's head into the topic that you all clicked the video to find out. Firstly, let's talk about how strong the Greek gods are, especially if we're going to go by order of appearance. And these guys are super easy to quantify because, for the most part, the hierarchy of power shown in this sector of the God of War universe is pretty linear and about what you would expect for a portrayal of the Olympian gods. First, you have the primordials. These guys created the entire cosmology and the conflict as seen during the intro of God of War Ascension, and during this battle they created the universe, the stars, all the other realms, so you know, granting them at a low-end universal scaling off the bat. And ahead of the primordials, you have all of the titans. These guys, you know, overthrew the primordials and beat them, so they're stronger than them. You know, you have Kronos, who defeated his father Uranus in a battle that's said to have spanned, you know, the entire cosmology. And, you know, Cory Bullock himself confirmed that, yeah, the Titans beat the primordials. And we know how Zeus did those guys, as yes, the Olympians collectively are stronger than the Titans, but if you want to see a pretty blatant example of how this is the case, once again, a younger and weaker Zeus just, you know, one-shot them all. And before you say that he had to utilize the Blade of Olympus, the Blade of Olympus is stated to just be his concentrated power. So, you know, the Titans were soloed by the concentrated power of a weaker and younger Zeus than the one in current day. But moving on to that subject, Zeus, by the time of God of War 3, is stated to be the strongest of the Olympians, and he has many narrative implications that suggest that he could easily beat the second and third strongest behind him. To start to actually gauge these guys' stats, we're gonna have to dive into the actual scale of the cosmology, as it's said to actually contain multiple infinite-sized spacetimes and other pocket dimensions that make up the Greek realm. Some of these places include, you know, the numerous pockets of the underworld, some titans have their own special dimensions, the mortal realm, and so on and so forth. And then you have the World Pillar, which is introduced during the events of Chains of Olympus, and it holds up literally everything we just talked about. And then you have, you know, a father goddess being Persephone, who literally is able to critically damage this construct at the end of her game, granting her low multiversal attack potency. Zeus as Zeus upscales her just by being Zeus. And for some more consistency for the top tier scaling to the World Pillar, Atlas was also doing some pretty big damage to it, and you know, Atlas ain't nothing special. Unfortunately though, the Greek saga doesn't have any crazy multiplier methods or, you know, metas that we can really use to gauge how much stronger Zeus is compared to someone like Persephone or even Atlas. Like, at best, we really only have the previous quotes I put on screen. That to me implies Zeus could one-shot the two gods who are stronger than Persephone and Atlas. meaning that Zeus is at least 10 times stronger than a character who should be low multiversal, which unfortunately would still mean he's low multiversal. As for speed metas, in the verse, the top tiers around the Greek saga should be around infinite speed, pretty confidently as well, as we have the light of Helios being able to illuminate the infinite underworld, and Kratos can react to said light, and Zeus can swap hands with that version of the Ghost of Sparta, and Hermes can also dodge said light as well, so there's that. So with the Greek gods covered for the most part, how do they compare to the King of the Monsters? And to be honest, I think he puts up a pretty good fight, if not just straight up beats them. Let's just start with Heisei Godzilla's 4D arguments, because he was able to defeat Space Godzilla, a character who utilizes supergravity, which is a fourth dimensional force. As by its very definition, it's basically a higher form of dimensionality, granting Space Godzilla universal plus scaling. For consistency in this range of AP, he's confirmed to have infinite power verbatim. In the manga adaptation for the film, he's also able to light up the infinite universe, and so on and so forth. He has a lot of consistency in this universal pocket of attack potency. But 4D at best, so what? That's what you guys might be thinking. In God of War, you have characters such as Kratos, whose birth, began time pretty much. And yeah, Godzilla beats Space Godzilla, but it's not really Space Godzilla's scaling that's important. It's how he beats Space Godzilla in the exact context of the situation. As Heisei Godzilla beat Space Godzilla by siphoning his energy onto his own base to effectively make himself even stronger. And he became so much stronger that if Space Godzilla attempted to siphon his energy back, he would have blew up because it was just that much power. Remember, Space Godzilla's cells could, harness 4D power, like unironically, as that's the stuff that's, found in the black holes that created Space Godzilla to begin with. So you can only imagine the amount of power that an actual fully grown Space Godzilla could hold. Some stuff says it's infinite, literally. Infinite 4D Space Godzilla, I'll let you guys decide on that. But the simple fact that Godzilla was able to become so much stronger that his very power would just blow up someone who could absorb all of that stuff we just talked about, means that at worst, he would fall into the low multiversal category of attack potency. And then you have another scan from this time period that confirms that he harnesses unlimited energy. So where Space Godzilla might be infinite 4D, Heisei Godzilla actually just is. So even if you want to say that the previous statement is hyperbolic, having a quote-unquote infinite amount of power in comparison to Space Godzilla would still, in my book, get him deeper into the low multiversal category than, Zeus. Because, he's stronger than Persephone, but I don't think Persephone is going to blow up by absorbing his passive aura. And that's ignoring the fact that Space Godzilla is likely deeper into the 4D/low multiversal category than even Zeus. And Godzilla literally blew that guy up. So Heisei Godzilla is dealing with pretty much anything from the Greek saga with mid difficulty. And as for speed, Heisei Godzilla is surprisingly nimble on his feet, being able to react both physically and with his atomic breath to Space Godzilla's crystals. This is important because Space Godzilla's crystals are able to travel faster than Space Godzilla himself, and Space Godzilla is noted to have traveled from the edge of the universe to Earth itself. Keep in mind, the universe in the Heisei era is confirmed to be infinite in size, granting Space Godzilla infinite speed. Said crystals are faster than him, and Godzilla could react to those, so you do the math. I know it's pretty surprising that Godzilla is that fast, but I guarantee you he's not as fast as today's sponsor, BC's Collectibles, as they're able to ship your favorite kaijus to your very hands. So, as fast as Space Godzilla is, he would never make it to your doorstep. These guys have a wide variety of products spanning from SH figure arts, monster arts, tons of posters, and my personal favorite, the movie Monster Series figures. These guys heard I was going to do a video about God of War and Godzilla, and they were kind enough to ship out to me the GMK movie Monster Series figure. If some of you guys don't know his lore, this guy's essentially haunted by the victims of the Second World War. And because of today's sponsor, I have him in my hands, and you can too. And even more because they have at least some representation for pretty much any main kaiju you can think of. If you're interested in this figure or any of the products seen, then I recommend you click the description down below as it will take you right to the shop. And before you check out, be sure to use code Goji-Chronic 5, which will give you a pretty neat discount on anything you buy. So, as always, thank you BC's Collectibles for sponsoring today's video. And with that being said, let's move on to, our regular scheduled program. A lot of people want to see Kratos come into contact with the Egyptian Pantheon in the next game of the God of War saga. But what if I told you that he's already been in their presence? Well, in a comic book from 2021, being God of War Fallen God, That's pretty much the plot of said comic. And while they don't have any real major bearings on the plot or storyline, they do have some potential scaling chains that I want to talk about. The story features Kratos fighting multiple Chaos Beasts, with both of them pressing him to varying levels. The first one seemingly makes him go into Spartan Rage briefly, and the second one actually is able to no-sell one of his physical blows. I want to note that these guys are fighting a post-God of War 3 Kratos, who still has a little bit of the power of hope inside of him, according to Cory Barlog anyway.
A little bit of hope that he didn't give to mankind, that he left inside of there, but locked way deep inside.
But yeah, he's pretty much just unquantifiably either weaker or stronger than his God of War 3 self. I'm on the side that he might be a little bit stronger because he has that little bit of power of hope. You guys gotta remember, power of hope was so massive to his base that, he went from getting no diff by Fear Zeus to no diffing the same guy with that amp. So if he had any like quantifiable measurement of that power left inside of him, for me, that's enough to get him over his, previous base. So the random beasts of this pantheon being able to press him is quite impressive, as the gods of Egypt should upscale these random chaos beasts. So if you use this scaling chain, you could possibly argue that the gods of Egypt are stronger than the gods of Greece. By itself, this mindset is a little shaky, but you can drastically strengthen this argument by taking into account that the one Egyptian god who's actually notable to the story, being the Egyptian god of wisdom Thoth, seems to be at a similar level of existence as Athena. This scaling chain is very impressive because it's noted that after her initial sacrifice, she ascended to a higher level of existence in which she gained more power and completely transcended all of her Olympian peers, which is a sentiment that's confirmed by Cory Barlog multiple times.
Selfless. She sacrificed herself to protect Zeus, and that actually allowed her to ascend to a higher realm, and she ended up realizing, oh look, there's more power up here. So it sort of corrupts her a little bit. In that selfless act, she was the first god to be selfless, and that was allowing her to ascend to a higher plane. She ends up going into a place that is higher than everybody else, and it totally messes with her head. She becomes just as bad as everybody else because she experiences a power greater than everybody. So
Thoth potentially existing at this same level, which is noted to be higher than anyone from the Greek saga, would come with some major scaling ramifications for all of the Egyptian gods. As we know, in Greece, the mere birth of the Titan Kronos ushered in time as a quantifiable form of measurement. This higher plane that Athena ascended to would at bare minimum be beyond time, making it likely a fifth dimensional form of existence. So Thoth being implied to be at a relative status as her would mean that even all of his Egyptian buddies would just upscale to that same level of power, meaning that these guys put up a much better fight than the Greek gods as their fifth dimensional beings. But Heisei Godzilla wouldn't be as hailed as he was if this is where he stopped in this gauntlet run. As we know, the cosmology of the Toho Godzilla franchise contains multiple 4D spacetimes, as well as characters who can utilize hyperspaces that distort time and space as well. And while on paper, this would just grant more consistency for the Universal Plus to low multiversal range that I already granted Heisei Godzilla, one thing we have to note is that super gravity just is super dimensional by its very nature. I obviously scaled to 4D, because that's just bare minimum stuff. That's assuming that the universe is a three-dimensional construct like we think our own universe is. But seeing as how it contains 4D spacetimes, super gravity by inherently being super dimensional in contrast to the known universe would get buffed to being a fifth dimensional force. And Space Godzilla could potentially utilize infinite of this force to amplify his attacks and his own power and such. And then you have Godzilla, who just became so much stronger that he overpowered this being to the point where, if the prior tried to absorb his energy, he'd blow up. So basically that infinite 4D scale I gave to Heisei Godzilla, it just gets buffed to 5D via the, inverse. Infinite 5D as well, I want to mention. So he would handle the Egyptian gods with medium to high difficulty, depending on if you think him having infinite 5D energy is hyperbolic or not. But either way, it would be into this level of dimensionality to a far deeper degree than what is showcased between the Egyptian gods or Athena, meaning that he would move on to our next tier of deities. Here we are finally at the Norse saga. So before we dive into where Godzilla would fall in this pecking order, it's important to scale the cosmology or this part of the God of War universe, as really everyone scales to the Yggdrasil, everyone notable that is. But what is the Yggdrasil? Well, it's a construct that transcends time and space, and it's also infinite in size, meaning that this is a fifth dimensional tree. And it would be 5D to an infinite degree because, it's infinite in size. Once again, I said everyone relevant scales to the Yggdrasil in some way, shape, or form because even Freya's brother could temporarily hold off an attack that is stated to have shooken the tree down to its very roots. And anyone who's played God of War knows that he isn't anything too impressive in verse. But someone who is Thor, the god of thunder. As in a battle with the world serpent, he hits the serpent so hard that the shockwaves of his impact is not only potent enough to travel to the Yggdrasil, it splinters the tree. On screen, this should be a photo of a splintered tree. So yeah, so everyone from Thor, the World Serpent, of the Aesir, they all scale to these infinite 5D ranges. Some deeper than others, granted, but they're all pretty relative. Keep in mind, this is where I scaled Space Godzilla. He would also be infinite 5D due to his scaling to supergravity, meaning that a base prime Heisei, in my honest opinion, would fall in between like the Thor, Jormungandr levels of power in the God of War saga, as his passive power was so potent that it can overwhelm a being that's infinite 5D. And then you have Thor, whose shockwaves can destroy or significantly affect infinite 5D structure. So there's a level of relativity between those two parties there. But he would also fall to characters such as Odin, who could one-shot said Thor. So Heisei Godzilla would fall in like the top 5 in terms of God of War inverse. Where on that 5 is pretty debatable, but he's just below Odin. Remember what I said, base Heisei Godzilla. As he has one more ace up his sleeve, being his burning transformation. As I truly believe with this state of power, he's gonna beat anyone in God of War. Though it would come at the cost of his own life, as burning Godzilla eventually leads to him blowing up and melting down. So, why is this the case? Well, 3 words, infinite heat ray. But before we get into that, I want to just establish the multiplier that Godzilla gets, well, just by becoming Burning Godzilla. Off rip, Burning Godzilla is stated to be a multiplier greater than anything he's ever received in the past. This is really, really important because at the end of Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, he arguably gets an infinite amp, like unironically, because he siphoned in Space Godzilla's infinite cosmic energy into his own base. So Burning Godzilla being like a multiplier stronger than something that's infinite, that's kind of insane work, not gonna lie. And then on top of that, he has the infinite heat ray, which is an atomic breath that isn't only infinite in heat and power, it also has the ability to increase in both of these statistics infinitely times more each time it's fired. So, he fires the beam 5 times in the movie. That's 5 layers of infinity right there alone. So, he's like multiple layers of infinity deep into 5D. I know it gets kind of insane, but that's Godzilla for you. With this drastic multiplier to his already pretty good stats, I don't even think Kratos is walking off more than like 2 of these like atomic breaths to the face. So in conclusion, a base prime Heisei Godzilla would fall anywhere between like Jormungandr to Thor possibly, but if you use his, peak all-time stats, he solos the verse. He kind of just does. Greek gods, Egyptian gods, Norse gods, even the ghost of Sparta would find himself a victim to the king of the monsters. So yeah, that was the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We covered a whole bunch of pantheons in this verse. And I bet you guys didn't know the Egyptian god scaling chain. It's not really that well known, so that's pretty neat, I guess. But anyways, was this outcome about what you expected, or do you disagree? Either way, be sure to comment it down below. And hey, if you want to talk to me personally, I'm going to be streaming in 2 hours from now. We're going to be playing some OG Fortnite, so if you want to bring some of your thoughts there, then, be sure to bring them there. And if you can't make it today, I'm going to be streaming Poppy Playtime Chapter 3 tomorrow, so, if you can't make it today, we're going to be streaming tomorrow as well. But if you don't care about any of that, as always, I'll see you guys next week. But until then, stay Big G fans.